Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the day two of Future Ready Education Summit, which tends to discuss the new practices, opportunities, challenges, and vision toward making the future ready workforce and enhancing education. For this summit, we have an excellent number of speakers, delegates, and topics, and we are very excited to have valuable insight from our eminent speakers and interaction with our audience. This 2 day summit has the purpose to have the deep understanding of the future of the education sector, how COVID has changed the education system, and how higher and school education institutions are reinventing themselves. So, schools have the strength to create instructional possibilities which can rework lives and extrude the destiny of generations to come. The virtual revolution is converting how training works. However, what position does the school play in this? Today's global needs that younger human beings discover ways to assume critically, communicate efficiently, and resolve issues efficiently. School want to adapt if you want to equip a student with the knowledge, abilities, and the knowledge they want for a success destiny. At colleges throughout India, we are running difficult to leverage era if you want to rework training and make it greater applicable for students of these days and tomorrow. Digital training is an essential a part of this transformation. It facilitates students analyze quicker through supplying them with the get right of entry to source anywhere there at any time. To, to include this extraint, instructor won't get right of entry to in addition to schooling on the way to use new era gear efficiently inside their curriculum. It's critical that they end up talented so that they don't sense intimidated through new software program or concern approximately coaching through error again. So, with that note, I would like to welcome our esteemed speakers and delegates to join the summit. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll be starting within few minutes with panel one. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first panel of a Future Ready Education Summit. And today we are joined by our eminent speaker for the topic Evolving, Transforming, and Reinventing Opportunities, Challenges, and Practices for Schools in the Pandemic Era. So we are joined by Dr. Neeta Bali, who is the director, principal of GD Goenka World School. Welcome, ma'am. And now we are joined by another speaker, Dr. Seema Negi, who is the director principal of Sanjeevani World School, Mumbai. Welcome, ma'am. And moving on to our another speaker, Dr. Anjum Babukhan, who is the director of education of Glendale Group of Schools, Hyderabad. Welcome, ma'am. And for the last, we will be soon shortly joined by Dr. Amrita Vohra, who is the director of education of GEMS International School. So thank you so much, our eminent speaker, for joining us. And I would like to invite Dr. Neeta Bali, ma'am, to moderate this session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shubham, and
Thank
good
you.
morning, everyone. Great to see all of you, even if it's virtually. I think it's great to meet people. Um, uh, Meeting people has become, I guess, post-pandemic. There is so much to catch up, particularly with children coming back to school. There's so much work to happen, and so many frayed ends, so to say, to tidy up, that actually meeting people in person is an ordeal. One has to create time, but meeting virtually itself, I think it's a great idea. So, hello, Seema. Good to see you. Anjum, great to see you. And welcome to this session. Uh, Needless to say that you're all both very eminent in your field. I'm hoping Amrita will join us shortly. And Dr. Anirudh Gupta was supposed to be here, but I think he's indisposed, so not here. Um, let us start, nevertheless, with a brief introduction, um, maybe 2 minutes, whatever best you'd like to say about yourself, and maybe you know some facet of your personality which we are not aware of, perhaps. If you could say one sentence about some facet of your personality, because all of us talk about our qualification and our professional accomplishments and what we represent as school leaders, which school do we represent, but also good to talk about something that is strange and quirky about one. So I'll start with you, Seema. If you could very briefly introduce yourself and tell us that one thing that we don't know about you.
So, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Dr. Neeta. Again, it's wonderful to be here together. So, something that I think most of the people do not know about me is anything that ends with ing. That fascinates me. So, right from gliding to parasailing to horse riding to rifle shooting, tracking, I have done everything. And I think that is how I would ever like to introduce myself rather than just telling that I am a director principal of Sanjeevani World School. But yes, I'm a person who is very, very curious. And this curiosity brings me everywhere because I am again here today to learn from each one of us.
Wonderful. Thank you. So great to hear about your spirit of adventure, Seema. I wasn't aware of this. I was aware of the fact that you are a fitness freak. That much I know. Anjum, over to you.
Hi, so I'm Anjum Babukhan, and I'm the Director of Education of Glendale Education Group here in Hyderabad. And I've been an educator for over 25 years. So something that maybe a lot of people would not know about me unless they're very close is that I love to have my inner child come out and play. And another fun fact is that I think I really, if there's a formula that works for you, then you keep using it. So I think I go back to the basics. So the ABCs. So I've written a book on the ABCs of brain compatible learning. I ABC everything, like the Learning Resource Center, how I organize all my folders, everything is alphabetized. So that just seems to be a formula that works for me, alphabetization. And the other thing is that I think my hobbies are probably A to Z. They range from everything from aromatherapy to Zumba. So you've got everything in between, like, reading, photography, yoga. So I love spas. So those are some fun facts about me.
Thank you, Anjum. So, so very wonderful. Well, a little bit about me, anyways. As a head of school, I am a head of school, anyways. The strange things, I won't call them strange, but yeah, well, I'm sure some people might find them very strange, considering, when you look at somebody who holds a position like this. I am a bathroom singer because much as I want to learn singing, I don't have the courage to actually get down to learning singing. Um, when nobody is watching, I stand in front of the mirror and try and do some Kathak steps. Considering my weight, I think I need to shed some weight if I really want to learn Kathak. But learning Kathak at the age of 60 looks a little strange. But nevertheless, I'm going to go for it. I've promised myself before I die, I will record a song and I will definitely give a performance. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it anyways. So I need all the strength and courage to do that. And these are two things that I really look forward to. The other things that excite me, of course, are reading and keeping a nice garden and meeting friends and gossiping. I love that. I'm sure every woman does. However guilty I feel at the end of the gossip, but I just love it and cannot resist it. So that's me. And well, now let's get on to more serious stuff. Our topic for today is evolving, transferring, and reinventing opportunities, challenges, practices in the pandemic era. So 2 years of pandemic have been very excruciating years, I'm sure, for educators, for school owners, for teachers, children, all stakeholders. They've been very, very difficult years. Uh, if one would have one's way, one would want to wipe them off the sands of time. But I don't think that's possible. However, according to a research by Observer Research Foundation, about 250 million children, 250 million children in India were affected very closely by school closures and lockdowns imposed by the governments forcefully and, of course, in response to COVID-19. The ones who really took a battering were the less privileged, because private and urban schools definitely were better adapted because of greater access to technology. But the government schools have struggled to transition from a traditional in-person teaching learning to an online ecosystem. But nevertheless, I think everyone would agree that the educational ecosystem has completely undergone a sea change in these last 2 years, has completely transformed itself. Now, since there are just two of you, so let me start by asking a question to Seema. Uh, Seema, my question to you is, um, education is supposed to be a bulwark against inequalities, and digital transformation can lead to democratization. Do you think that is possible? It's a bulwark against inequalities, inequities, and a digital transformation. Can it really lead to a more equitable distribution or democratization?
So, first of all, it's a very interesting question and at the same time, very thought provoking question. And I think we as educationists, we need to reflect and ponder on that. We have seen during pandemic that one thing that we did not stop as a teaching fraternity is we wanted to reach out to each and every child, whichever way. But today, when we sit here and we discuss with the best of educationists from the country, uh, did we really do that? I mean, there's a major digital divide when we talk about India. And when we talk about technology reaching each and every child, there are still few whom we could not reach. Because when our children are coming to our school, we are able to identify the learning gaps. So, something we can say that yes, we are moving ahead with technology. Technology is bridging the gap. We want to make this entire society and education system more democratic, where each child has voice and choice. But again, it's time to pause and think, were we able to give that? And are we doing that? Here, I think, Dr. Bali, if we can really work out on some module wherein public private partnership can work. If suppose a school which is financially a better school can handhold a school, and then we can share resources, we can share everything, so that at least each school, when takes care of one school, we are somewhere able to say that yes, we can maintain equity, or we can take a step forward to maintain that. Though if you ask me right now, honestly speaking, we could not reach to each and every learner who needed us.
Mhm. I quite agree with you, Seema, what you said about the digital divide. I think in spite of trying, in pockets, in spite of trying, the digital divide still remains. And your suggestions, were we able, I mean, the fact that, your question, were we able to give back? I don't think that has really happened. But your suggestion about public-private partnership and mentoring, those who are privileged and have the wherewithal, if they choose to mentor those who are in need, I think that definitely can take things forward. Before I go to my next question, let me welcome Dr. Amrita Vohra from GEMS International School. Welcome, Amrita, to this session. I'm sure Amrita will have a lot to contribute with. She herself is a very, very seasoned educator. I'm sure she'll be able to contribute a great deal. So, hi, Amrita. So, let me now go to Anjum. And Anjum, let me ask you a question that perhaps, as an educator, you should be able to give us to throw light on it. What are the challenges that educators and children would have faced with e-learning? What are some of the challenges that they would have faced and are still facing?
Well, I mean, now we have actually opened up physically, fully, after 2 years. But during the pandemic, the 2 years, definitely the challenges would have been many, right? One was the social and emotional connect, first and foremost, because if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, after your safety and your, basic needs, you have a need for belongingness, right? And how is it that the teacher can make the class feel, kind of connected to one another? And how is it that you can reach out to your peers, children who are your own age? So we had to do a lot of interesting things in e-learning, with breakout rooms and different type of, getting their voice to kind of be heard a little bit more with surveys, Mentimeter, showing their work or their expressions, on Padlets. So we had to be a little bit creative and utilize any of all the tech tools that we could. So definitely the children, they missed being in the physical space. For co-curricular activities, it was again another challenge, but we did continue. We continued with, in fact, visual and performing arts. We continued with physical education. We did different things like, fitness challenges. Kids created their own little obstacle courses for exercise in their homes. We got parents involved. Really, really cute videos of, parents and children both sort of doing these little fitness challenges at home. So that was one. The co-curricular activities, the social and emotional learning. And then I think just bringing the teachers, I think, onto the online space full-fledged. There were some of them who were, comfortable with it. Some of them who were a little bit older, older digital immigrants, maybe they struggled for a little bit, but I think everyone, by and large, they caught on. I mean, we were really surprised that there was almost like a smoothless transition. We just kind of needed a week to move over. That one summer, I think, was an advantage because we had lockdown 3 weeks, we closed down. So that summer, I think everybody, they had nothing to do home under lockdown. So a lot of online courses. I mean, we had so many, courses and webinars. So I think everybody had a chance to get, equipped with that. But yeah, those are a few that I can think of off the top of my head. But definitely for schools, we had so much staff, right? So unfortunately, with 2 years of, transport not working, so, how do we, keep, we had to keep a lot of the staff on retainer salary. So I think there was administrative challenges as well, not just learning challenges with the pandemic.
Yes, thank you, Anjum. I think your first point that you made about the social emotional needs of students. I find that children, in fact, those who have gone through these 2 years of pandemic, being confined to their homes and to online learning, a lot of them were reflecting signs of social anxiety when they
Mhm.
came back.
I actually,
And
yeah, if I may, I could just kind of share what worked really well. It became our wellness formula to actually address this challenge. If I may just take 2 minutes to share that. So we actually created this program called the Whole Person Approach. And it was about like kind of the ABCs of the body, mind, heart, and spirit. And every month we concentrated on a different domain. So if it was like the body, then it was naturalistic intelligence. Those who could go for a walk, those who could just take care of plants, they were much, much more aware of their environment. They saw the skies clear up, how far they could just see out into the horizon. It was actually really beautiful. They started to hear more birds and things like that. So we did a lot of things with the naturalistic and bodily kinesthetic intelligences under that one. Then in the hard domain, we tried to develop the attitude of gratitude. We had a couple of weeks of kindness counts. So whoever were the workers, or even if they were living in, gated communities or apartments, what they did to extend themselves within those, physical kind of limitations was, amazing. What types of things they came up with. And then we had, the spirit domain. We got into the musical rhythmic, the visual spatial, even the existential, because I think everybody really kind of realized their mortality. They knew that this disease was very, very unpredictable, and there were stories of, people passing away. So you started to think about your life in a very, very profound way during the pandemic. And I think the kids, we had a chance to sort of for the first time get into their existential intelligence and realize, like, what is the meaning of life and the purpose. And we looked at things like the hero's journey, and like who's been a hero, who has kind of achieved what they wanted to achieve in life. And when we get through this pandemic, what is it that you would like to do? So it was like actually really beautiful. And then with the mind domain, we did lots of things of reading. We actually created an online reading and math program. So while a lot of schools were facing learning losses, we actually were able to devise a program in math and reading proficiency to actually have learning gains. And that was really, really amazing that we were able to do that online without actual like physical books and things like that, the way we had set it up. So that whole person approach just became like our wellness formula during the pandemic. So while there were challenges, but I think most educators, and every school would have a different story, they came up with very genius ways of making sure that the learning doesn't stop. Even though our buildings were closed, learning didn't stop. I think faculty, I mean, hats off to them, got really, really creative with ways in which we continued to try to teach the best that we could under the remote circumstances.
thank you, Anju, for sharing. Those are some fantastic ideas. I've jotted them down. Maybe we should start. We did do a little bit, but this seems very comprehensive and looks very interesting. And no, doesn't necessarily have to be confined to the pandemic. In fact, it could be something that one can do right through the year.
Yes,
Brilliant,
yes,
brilliant. Thank you.
that's what we
Yeah.
decided. Yes.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you for sharing. And if you can share more, we'd be happy. If you can send some more inputs, we'd be more than happy. I'd be more than happy to read and incorporate some in our school. Amrita, welcome. And I have a question to ask you. Um, what I'd like to ask you, Amrita, is one sec. Let me ask you a question which I had worked out for Dr. Anirudh.
Okay.
All right. So Yes. Shifting to e-learning has sparked a debate. Has it made education more inclusive or widened the digital divide? And is this the start of ISV hegemony? Is it the start of ISV hegemony? Because this is what I wanted to focus on. The ISV hegemony, the Internet Service Providers hegemony. So, would you like to shed some light on that?
Uh, Thank you for that question. Interesting indeed. And my apologies for joining in a bit late today in the session. And I was really loving some of the ideas that both my co-panelists were sharing just now. Um, Yes, and no. I think both are true. We none of us here can really predict what's coming in the future, and there is definitely an increased level of speculation and uncertainty because the very speed of change has really changed phenomenally with all the forays that technology around us is doing. But I think one of the things that Nelson Mandela says, and we always talk about it in the school, is that it always seems impossible until it's done. So I think the pandemic also brought out the very innovative side within each one of us. There were a lot of things that technology could have helped us with, and we genuinely started exploring all those as educators. All I mean, across the board, even in the rural India, even in very budget private schools, even in the public sector, everywhere. I think we suddenly realize that okay, this is what is a fallback and you cannot ignore it completely, needs to be utilized and then positively. And so that journey began, and everybody at their own in their own way explored it, found ways around it, and so on. Some schools were better prepared, some were not, but technology is here to stay. It's now in the very bloodstream of education, and it is going to be this way. But still, the teacher is at the heart of it. The human is very much there. Just today, somebody was asking me these questions. I want to digitalize my school. I want to get the tabs and so on. How should I really go about it? Should I just get them and then put them there, or what? How should I begin first? I said, first, your team needs to be in sync with it. First, your team needs to know what exactly and how exactly are they going to use it. You are ensuring that you're going to have technology in the hands of each learner, which is beautiful. That is required. But what exactly? So plan it out first. What the teacher does, just devices and technology doesn't make learning what it is, right? It is how we use it for the right kind of things, how we don't let it overpower the actual aspects of learning, how we don't let it lead to or in fact worsen all the social anxiety that we were just talking about, how being present in person with each other is the real essence, and there is no replacing brick and mortar schools. There is no replacing the human element in the idea of learning and teaching. And there, that the teacher is at the center. How we ensure that despite whatever else, we essentially bring back the respect to that human teacher in the classroom who really makes it all happen. And that I think is critical in multiple ways, in every possible way, from all stakeholders, whether it is parents or the government or the school managements, anybody and everybody from within the system and from without. We need to really bring back that focus on the social emotional aspects of school education and the teacher in the system.
A little more, Amrita, perhaps, on, as I said, you know, the use of technology, such extensive use of technology. Will it result in the ISP hegemony? Will it result in monopoly by internet source providers, internet service providers? Do you think that's likely to happen?
To a great extent, it already is happening, isn't it? To a great
Yeah.
extent, almost all of us, anyway, the minute there's a question, earlier there was genuine inquiry into that question. right? You would look at various sources and you would try to figure out things. So there was learning in it. We may not have had the internet back in the day, but we would go to the books, the good old books, and look up and maybe the library, or ask people around, ask the more knowledgeable around, other around, so to speak, whether it was a friend or a teacher or a mentor, anybody. Today we just Google search, or we may use another tool, another provider or another search engine, etc. But that stops it. And Google may not always give us all the answers, or it may very often give us misleading, incorrect answers. So that is already there. I think it needs to be consciously understood and therefore avoided. Where it's required, it can be, we need to tame technology instead of being tamed by it. If we are tamed by it and let ourselves completely get into that zone, then of course it will lead to that hegemony. But if we are conscious about it, which your question is talking about in so many ways, then, and we keep the focus on the human being and the more humane aspects of learning, which is what really is so needed. Even if you want to work as a technology expert future, what skills you really require are the more humane aspects of learning, and to be able to use technology for all that data and analysis where it can come in handy as a tool, right? So that has not to be, is not to be forgotten. That has to be at the base. That's
Well
what I
said. I think one can't weed out the time-tested practices, and you use technology very judiciously and weave it into the system with great care, so that
yeah.
you know everything which is of value, something that the wisdom you've accumulated over the years, a children's love for books, for actual resources, all that is not thrown out of the window. So, and of course, the other thing is, with the use of technology, also the false side is the addiction to technology,
Hmm.
which is not helping too many children. Particularly, you know, those who are sitting in front of their laptops for hours on end. It's not really helping. So, at the end of the day, you find a lot of children walking around like zombies because you have been sitting, looking at your laptop screen for 2 and 3 hours, which is obviously going to impact not merely your eyesight, but also somewhere your ability to think, reflect, probably, and to read also. Why rely the good old newspaper? Remember the days when everyone would wait so with such impatience for the morning newspaper, which you'd enjoy so thoroughly with your cup of tea.
If I
Now,
may, yeah, if I may add, even adults are walking around like
yes,
zombies. It's so
yes,
critical to be able to live in the moment, which is not happening because everybody is just busy.
yes, yes, yes. Why all of us? In fact, on one occasion when my son was here from abroad, he said, "Why don't you put your phones away?" Because the moment you hear a sound, you want to check out who sent you a message.
Mm.
So the focus is completely destroyed. You're
Mm.
not really, you're multitasking, you're trying to find out what's happening on the other fronts. So I think you've got a point there. One needs to use technology very judiciously, very mindfully, very
Yeah,
mindfully.
very fine.
So let me take my next question to Seema. Seema, how can the use of OER, that is open educational resources, improve learning?
So I really vouch for OER because I think during pandemic, me and my entire team, we have learned a lot because of this open resource. So I consider this open resource like a library, like how Dr. Amrita said, we used to go to library to find out. So if we consider this open resource as a pool of knowledge, from where we have to mindfully derive what is needed. Again, technology plays a major role here. So, what we need to do is we have to mindfully derive and extract what we are looking for, not just because it is there, so we just have to go and take it. It cannot be that way, and that is what I think we have to work out on when it comes to taming the technology, which Dr. Amrita very rightfully said, because we, as you said, we are surrounded by technology. If we see whatever we do, machines are mimicking us. So can we really become more mindful? A consumer who is not consuming just whatever is available to them, but become a mindful creator and contributor to technology. I think OER definitely provides you that kind of resource if you want to sharpen your own skills. I have done that during pandemic. There are so many things I have learned from these open resources. My team has learned, and some of the elder children, they come and tell us, okay, this resource is available. Are you using it properly? So it's all depends upon how we are embracing technology and how we are going towards this resource. If we are a seeker, we will definitely get what we are looking for. If we just go there to, I mean, just take everything and then just copy paste it, then definitely these are very harmful.
Yeah. In fact, I quite subscribe to your point of view, Seema. I think this time of pandemic, it has taught us that using open courses, free to learn guides, software which is readily available, good software which is readily available, um, various techniques, videos which are available. I think a lot of learning has happened, and perhaps you're right, but at the same time, very mindfully using these resources to learn rather than becoming a slave to technology. As Amrita
True.
said, not becoming a slave to technology, using technology to our advantage, not
So if
allowing
we,
technology to
so if we,
overpower.
if we learn and then put in our own ideas, trust me, we come out with something very, very new. How Anjum was telling about this beautiful amalgamation of all MIs to make a holistic approach. What we did, like, I'm sharing it because we have learned it from so many platforms, and we all know social emotional gaps are there. We have come up with a room called Sukoon in our school. So every
Uh,
floor now has a Sukoon room, you know. So I mean, there are a lot of activities children are doing in that room, but the moment they enter, they know that they are entering to a mindful and peaceful zone. So we need
Beautiful,
to be open to learning.
beautiful. What a fantastic idea. Maybe we'll start something like that here. Anjum, how to prevent students from disengaging from learning during school closures using only online platforms? And a lot of use of online platform is happening, still happening, because as Amrita said, technology is here and technology is here to stay. And now that we realize the benefits of using technology, and particularly in schools like ours, where you're transacting the international curriculum, already the students are being exposed to a lot of use of technology. So, how does one prevent students from disengaging if you're having online classes? Because now everyone knows that you don't have to traverse long distances for that extra class. Let's do it on Zoom, right? And during the days of the pandemic, I would find that a lot of students would not turn on their cameras. Uh, so somewhere I felt that students are starting to disengage from learning. So how can one prevent this kind of disengagement from learning, particularly when you're having these online classes? You're on mute, Anjum. Anjum, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, there's so many different ideas actually. Starting with what you mentioned, the camera. So, attendance is counted when camera's on. I mean, except for like maybe a couple of minutes if the child has to go and have a bio break or something like that. But otherwise, attendance counts. So schools, that's what one of the first things that they start with, right, is the attendance. And then when the attendance is not there, there's a concern and there's a follow-up process with that. Secondly, I mean, I think Zoom more than Google Meet probably offers a lot of tools, especially in the upgraded version. You can, like I mentioned before, use breakout rooms. Because the thing is, if you look at the way the brain engages, so in neuroscience, like, and I mentioned this in my book, like, it's basically like on top 5% is what you can retain if you are listening to a lecture. But when you're reading something, you maybe can retain about 10%. And then if you see something audio visual, it increases to 20%. So we did, really encourage our faculty, and they were very resourceful in getting, any audio visual aids. So instead of just speaking, audiovisual increased it to about 20% of, memory retention or understanding, comprehension of the topic. Now, when we demonstrate something, it increases again to about 30%. So you would be surprised. There was a lot of very beautiful tech tools that were doing, lab experiments where you can do dissections, digital dissections, and things like that. So there were some really, really beautiful tools for a lot of the subjects, and we encouraged the teachers to use that. But still, it was passive, right? So the maximum that you can achieve in terms of learning is only about 30%, according to, neuroscience. So that's using audiovisual and demonstration methods is going to increase. But what happens, just see, when we can use a tool like the breakout room, okay? According to neuroscience, your group discussion, so whether it's in physical or in virtual, but it's a discussion, right? You have a task and you have to, with your team, answer a certain question or work out a different formula, and then you go back to the whole group to present it. So when there's a group discussion, your learning and retention shoots up to 50%. Okay, so that is what we could use in technology. And then if there's any way that the teachers could sort of ensure some practice by doing, even if it's in the online scenario. So neuroscience says that when you practice doing something, then it's 75%. That's a little bit of facts for you, but the maximum that one can learn is actually when they teach it to someone else. So the use of flipped classrooms was the far most impactful, because neuroscience says that when you do a flipped class, like if you have to teach your peers something, right, you learn a part of the lesson, and then you have to be the one that kind of like shares it with your peers. That is 90%. So when you teach somebody else, you actually almost kind of sort of master it, right? So the best way to know something is to teach it, is the secret.
Absolutely. So very right. In fact, I think a lot of schools have tried flipped classrooms and they work well, provided, of course, the students understand the nuances of how a flipped classroom actually works. The initial
Yeah.
days may be a little difficult because you're offered everything on a platter, but once they see the excitement
Yes.
of this,
Yeah.
and you understand the finesse and the nuances, I think definitely
And
it
you'd
works
be
well.
surprised, as how resourceful they got. I mean, how they created their own PPTs, how they kind of created like that little Mentimeter, little quiz, or taking a poll, so how they got things involved. So it wasn't just about mastering the topic, but it's about also being able to be understandable and comprehensible to your peers, right? So that actually helps. So like I said, I mean, nothing can replace the physical learning scenario that is multisensorial, and you are immersed in a certain very different type of enrichment, and the way that if a teacher is facilitating properly, how you can get empowered through those face-to-face interactions. Yes, if you're just on technology passively, then your social skills actually go down. We have issues with teenagers not being able to be comfortable with making eye contact or striking up a little conversation that would happen around the water cooler, or these little different skills. If we don't incorporate them into the online, even if, say, if it is a remote, or we, God forbid, have a bad variant and we have to go back to that remote for a while, the social and emotional really will suffer. um,
Okay. I think her internet seems to be giving her trouble. We'd carry on with what we were speaking about. Um, Amrita, very quickly, how do you see, or what can be done, perhaps? Some suggestions on what can be done to transform education in the post-pandemic era. Maybe two suggestions that come
Okay.
to your mind.
Okay. So just taking it forward from what Anjum was actually speaking, and and the engagement. I mean, whether we are online or offline, even earlier, we all knew that the idea of flipping or teaching is the best way to learn actually. So and the flipped classroom. So in the physical environment also we were doing it, and now when things turned online, people started doing it online as well. There are, what is very important is that for in whatever we do, we ensure that maximum possible senses are engaged. The child is able to look at something, the child is able to hear something, the child is able to touch and feel, and tactile understanding is there. The child is able to move around and use bodyscaping and emotions and thinking while learning. If we are able to engage the whole person in the learning process through different, and there is no one way. If you kind of try to use the flipped classroom in every other lesson, the children will get bored of that too. So very in the classroom is like really drama. You have to keep changing the strategies every now and then. There has to be that element of surprise, whether you're online or whether you're offline. I mean, technology has just made so many more tools and so many more free source materials available to us, open source and so on, we discussed just now. So if so much more of resources are available to us, so many more tools are handy for us now, so much more is possible. So it's just opened wide the gates of possibility, and it's really opened the
I
world to
think
us.
it's time for us
Which,
to wind up. Time
yeah,
for us to wind
that
up.
is what I think we need to use effectively.
Yeah. So the closing remark in just precisely few seconds. Seema, your closing remark in just a few seconds.
So, all what I would like to say is, though we have discussed this social emotional connect, and at the same time, instilling adversity quotient is what we are looking forward to make this generation more mindful.
Yeah. Amrita, what about you? Your closing remark. You're on mute. Please unmute yourself. Amrita, unmute yourself.
Apologies for that. I think the world is quite literally in our hands. We just have to be positive and use it effectively for everyone's learning as a community.
Yeah, my closing remark, I think more than anything else, we have to teach our children resilience and adaptability to change. Because if this could happen now, this can happen in the future as well. Thank you, ShrewDO Media, for allowing us this fantastic platform for bringing us together to discuss some very crucial issues related to education. We enjoyed discussing the issues thoroughly. Thank you, Shubham.
Thank you so much, all our eminent speaker, and thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights on the topic and making this panel discussion very interesting. And I would really like to thank Dr. Neeta Bali for moderating this session so well. And we are so honored to host you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, for the delegates in this panel discussion, we were joined by Dr. Anjum Babukhan, who's the Director Education of Glendale Group of Schools, Dr. Neeta Bali, Director Principal of GD Goenka World School, Dr. Amrita Vohra, Director Education, GEMS International School, and Dr. Seema Negi, Director Principal, Sanjeevani World School. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and making this panel discussion very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.